I'm Jim Collison, and live from Omaha, Nebraska. This is Gallup's Theme Thursday, Season 2, recorded on September 7th, 2016. Theme Thursday is a Gallup webcast series that dives deep into the CliftonStrengths Finder themes, one theme at a time, and today's theme is restorative. If you have questions, comments, or contributions during the webcast, we do have a live chat room available for you right below the main video window. If you just look down there, best way to get your questions into the program, just bottom left-hand corner, choose log in, choose the guest account, put your name in the guest. Where it says guest, just take that out. It'll be guest in a number. Take it out, put your name in. Hit submit, and you will be in our chat room. There's a handful or two handfuls of you out there now. Best way to get your information in. We love to have your comments during the program. If you're listening to the recorded version or need custom strengths coaching solutions for small, medium, or large organizations, contact us. Send us an email, coaching@gallup.com. By the way, that's just kind of a good general email as well if you have general questions, coaching@gallup.com. Don't forget to visit the Gallup Strengths Center, just gallupstrengthscenter.com for your coaching resources and Strengths Finder training needs. You can also catch the video in both streaming and downloadable audio, and many of you are doing it because we're setting records in our audio downloads. Almost 15,000, not almost, over 15,000 downloads last month for Call the Coach Theme Thursday, some of those webcasts that we do. You guys are doing a great job. If you want to get it automatically to your phone and never miss an episode, and why, Maika, why would you want to miss an episode? Why?
Have it automatically done. You don't have to execute. We've got support systems to execute for you.
That's right. That's right. We'll do it for you. Head out to all the instructions on how to get that done, including the link, coaching.gallup.com, and click the subscribe tab if you want to get subscribed to everything we do. Maika Leibbrandt is our host today. She's my favorite learning development consultant here at Gallup. And Maika, even though it's not Thursday today, real weird, and people listening to this in a time-shifted manner won't really care, but welcome to Theme Thursday.
Thanks, Jim. Great to be here. You know, we are doing this on a Wednesday instead of a Thursday, and that makes my life all the much more fun. It's one less day I have to wait to get to talk to you and everybody about this awesome theme.
Yeah, we got to speed up on restorative this week, and some quick action in the Call to Coach group. If you aren't a part of our Facebook group, head out to facebook.com/groups/called-to-coach. That two is TO, called to coach. That's out there in Facebook, and we always do a poll every week, and we post the recaps that are available to you. But we had to kind of speed that up this week. And so as we think about restorative, Maika, let's remind folks to download the companion guide. If you haven't done that yet, just pause the video. Up above there is a link to the companion guide, or they're all out on the coach's blog on the GWSW tab right now. You can get those companion guides. Print that out, have it ready to go. But Maika, as we think about restorative, what's the definition?
Pretty cool definition, totally amazing theme here. And again, our goal is to help everybody really understand all of these themes so that we're speaking the same language when we use these language, but also to help you fall in love with it. So today we get to fall in love with an executing theme. People exceptionally talented in the restorative theme are adept at dealing with problems. They're good at figuring out what is wrong and resolving it.
Yeah, kind of a fixing. I think if we boil that down to one word, we often think of a fixer or someone who likes to fix things. We were talking in pre-show. I think sometimes I've been asked several times if I have restorative because I have a maximizer talent that likes to make things better. Right. And when we think about that, the difference between the two, maybe making things better and repairing that which is broken, maybe that's a good way to divide those two out. Maximizer could look like restorative. Any thoughts on that?
Sure. You know, we'll get to this when we talk about most and least likely, because maximizer is the least likely to show up with restorative. Very often I'll talk about these two when I'm teaching in a course to help people separate what is the difference, because I think very often the action can look the same, but it's important to understand that the motivation is different. Sometimes I'll use the example of somebody with restorative and somebody with maximizer, both belonging to a club of people who likes to fix up old cars. If you are somebody with maximizer, you might be able to put in the latest technology. Jim, I'm sure you would add some sort of Bluetooth capability to the old car. You might go for the coolest paint color you could find to make sure that you've got all the best that current technology would allow. Somebody with restorative might say, okay, I need to fix this to be exactly what it was in the year that it was in its glory. So really looking, that word restore is really important there. Or I liked that you use the word repair. So how do I give something life that it is lacking? So your car with somebody with restorative might look like you would replicate the paint colors that came out the year that it was most sold, or you might look at how do I make sure that the engine is exactly like it was or like it needed to be. So it's still this idea of making an improvement, but restorative wants to look for how do I take something that's broken and bring it back to its original glory, whereas maximizer might start ahead of that and say, how do I take something that isn't broken and make it even better? So I think a lot of it is the motivation for where do you begin, but the essence of restorative is this knack for and attraction to fixing things that are broken.
I think that's a good metaphorical way of looking at it, and some good defining there. Let's look at this theme's power and edge.
Yeah, so what's great about it? Those with strong restorative talents bring a solution-oriented mindset to daily problems. They readily take on projects that others believe can't be solved. They can analyze the situation, identify potential shortcomings, and make the necessary adjustments. Overall, in our database with 14 million people having taken StrengthsFinder, this does show up in the top 10. It's around number 9. So you're likely to run into somebody with high restorative. And when you do, I think give them that opportunity to say, what have you fixed lately? What are you anticipating? How can we make the most of your agility with problems?
I love that "can't be saved" phrase that's in there, because I think that's a watershed. It's a separator, right? It's that difference,
Yeah.
like we were just talking about, of just wanting to fix or improve things, but then we'd have those projects when we think about it and like, you know what, this can't be fixed. And those with restorative go, everything can be fixed, right? I mean, that's a broad generalization, but I think I love that "can't be saved" idea kicking in there. When we've had great success, and this is, Mike, I think been the favorite part for most listeners as we've been getting feedback from you, when we think of the raw versus mature section that we're going to talk about here.
Mm-hmm.
When we think about it in those two terms, how do we think about restorative?
So raw versus mature, I do want to say this is probably what we get the most feedback about, and sometimes I worry about it because I think if this is all that you listen to, that you take away the understanding that every theme has things we should look out for, and it does. But the idea of raw versus mature is not being able to label the negative and say, well, that's your restorative, it's raw, and move on. We really do have to see this concept of raw versus mature as being a continuum of personal development. So the reason we need coaches, the reason we have people help us really understand our strengths is so that we can have that journey of self-awareness, self-regulation, and self-expression. And so I think when we talk about raw versus mature, please don't end here. Please understand that it is, how can you notice some of these themes in their rawest form? What do they live like without any sort of self-regulation? And then what is the mature side? So how do we lean into the fact that every single theme, every talent can get even better? So just a little piece, if you've never watched something before and you're thinking about what is this raw versus mature. With restorative, raw restorative is problem focused, because you're so, that idea that everything can be fixed and everything should be fixed. You can get to the point where all you can see all day are problems because you're very adept at dealing with them. I think the mature side of that, or using that awareness of problems for the greater good, is being solution focused. So not only pinpointing what's wrong, but also having that all-encompassing picture of here's what can be better. And that might just come down to how you communicate what you're noticing. So it might be something as simple as the raw restorative will say, here's where we're going to trip and fall on our face, whereas mature restorative might say, here's where we could trip and fall on our face, and here's how we can avoid that.
A question for you, and I'll throw it out to the chat room as well, because we got some folks, although in the survey we did in pre-show, a lot of us have restorative towards the bottom. But Maika, when we think about fixing the problems in restorative, is it the desire to do that, or is it also the talent to come up with the steps or whatever's necessary to get it done? How do we separate those two of being the one who actually does the repair versus the one who has, guys, we need to get this done? How do you separate those two?
I think understanding restorative as an executing theme helps us sort of sort toward that. Restorative has a drive forward. So it's not that influencing of, hey, I know something's broken and it could be better. Maximizer, for example, is an influencing theme. It's about pushing toward something that could be better. Restorative is an executing theme. So it's different than something like Achiever, which would be here's the steps that we need to take and let's check those off our list as we move forward. Restorative is I'm in the problem and I'm moving the problem toward a solution. So it's not quite as, I think, step by step as maybe Achiever would be, but it still certainly has it has a forward progression to it. It has an engine behind it, if you will. So it's in many ways restorative is I can be the person to fix the problem. I can be the fix. But I think the mature side of restorative can have more of an influential or even a relationship building aspect to it, where it's guys, let's get together and let's think about how we can fix things. In fact, that brings me to our next side of raw versus mature. I think raw restorative takes on all of the responsibility to fix on your own shoulders. And if you talk to people with high restorative, they'll talk about times where they themselves were the solution. And that can work, but it's even better if it reaches a place where you can help other people come on board toward the solution. So I use this phrase, the facilitator of fix. I think is the mature side of that versus I am the fix, which might be a little bit more raw.
Yeah, and I like that. That's the me we concept we spent a lot of time thinking about and working on with this raw versus mature. Is that in its raw state, I take complete responsibility for that, and it's on my shoulders. And the mature brings that into a group setting, and how can I use the best of the group or the group itself? Mm-hmm. How can I use the best of that group to get a fix put in and get it working? We spend a ton of time. I mean, in software, that is what we do, right? We create something and then we spend an endless amount of time fixing it for whatever reason. Yeah. It just never. So for someone who has high restorative, go into software development because there's always stuff being broken for whatever reason that has to be fixed. So the me versus we, that's to me, it's bringing people together. And Mike, I think there's great satisfaction to a team especially for me. Like I don't have it, but I find great satisfaction when I'm a part of a team that fixes something. Sure. And so to be allowed to be a part of that, to that group is a privilege and is engaging. And so it takes it from beyond me just getting it done and being the hero to the whole team gets to be a hero.
Yeah, absolutely.
I love that separation.
I think there's something that people with restorative bring to a team too that's more emotional than just executional, if that's a word. I've worked with people with high restorative who actually were in our tech team, and I have high strategic, high adaptability, high maximizer. If I notice that something isn't working, I prefer to go around it and find a different solution. I will discard the broken, and that sometimes means that things get really broken because I've discarded them so many times that my options get really narrow, and at some point I do have to get something fixed. And I would always come almost in an apologetic manner saying, I'm so sorry that this is broken and now you have to fix it, with some of my partners there. And it was always such a energizing reaction that they would give me of, hey, that doesn't bother me. In fact, I'm attracted to some of these things that need attention, some of these things that are currently broken. I think because of the progress orientation of restorative, they don't get overwhelmed by something being broken because that's only its current state. I think people with restorative can see through the current disconnect into the bigger picture. And they can accept that and be excited about it and not be overwhelmed by it. So when I was trying to explain this in our, as I was thinking about it earlier this morning, I tended to explain restorative as a patience with problems, and I don't think that's accurate. I think that if you have restorative, you don't have to be patient with problems because problems are in fact something that to you don't require patience. It's probably being more patient with those of us who try to apologize for problems than the problem itself. But what an amazing gift that you give to your team if you've got high restorative, being able to say, hey guys, this is broken right now and it won't always be broken, and we can be a part of that fix. Yeah,
as a manager, it's dangerous to not have someone on your team that has restorative, I think, because what you said, and I agree with you. I just go around the problems, right? Let's just go around it. And there are times those problems need to be addressed. Like someone needs to actually dig in, and it's terribly satisfying, even is with someone very low, like 32, 33 for me, that when it does get restored, there's a little bit of me that goes, man, that was really worth the effort. And I'm really appreciative of those folks that, and I've caught myself several times running into those people who said, no, this isn't right. We need to dig in. And I'm tempted to gloss over it. Let's just move on. There's plenty of other opportunities. We don't need this. Like you said, let's go around it. And so I think as a leader, as a manager, as a coach, I think to begin, especially on teams, to look for those people who have that and really value that warning sign. Because I think in a lot of groups, it gets kind of like, there's a problem. Oh, I didn't want to deal with this. And we have to listen to that, right? I mean, and beyond complaining, because there is maybe that raw side of it that's just complaining about all the problems, or there's tons of problems and we bring up more, we collect instead of doing things about them, we just collect the problems. We actually put them in systems where they can be taken care of.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what else when we think of raw versus mature?
I think that, so I coach in our education space quite a bit. And last week I was coaching a principal with high restorative, and she told me that, there's always been something about her that drew her toward places that other people were afraid of. So populations of students that needed extra help, communities that really needed some high touch sort of situations, even, subject matter that it wasn't spending time with the easiest kids to teach. And she never was able to put that into words as being something positive. She always thought it was just a quirk about her, or maybe a service-minded value. And when she saw the word restorative, she realized, wow, that really is why I'm drawn to these areas that need extra help. But she also told me that as she's starting out the school year, she knows everything that's going to go wrong before it goes wrong. And sometimes for her, and these are her words, she said, when my restorative is raw, I'm very negative. Because she only gets a limited amount of time with all of her faculty, all of her staff, what she wants to point out are things that be righted before they break. But I think that raw restorative, if that's the only slice that you get from her, you're getting that anticipation of brokenness that can come across as purely negative. The mature side of that is communicate potential problems as part of a bigger picture. So let people know what you're seeing. It's a gift, it's a talent to be able to see things that might go wrong even before they go wrong. But the way that you communicate that needs to be a part of, communicate that you care alongside it. Communicate it in a compassionate way, not solely sort of an executing way where it's, here's your list of everything that can go wrong. So I think that the mature side of it is being able to maybe partner a little with some other strategic thinking themes and think about how can I give people the bigger picture, still communicate that I care about the problems.
No, very good. As we start thinking about complementary themes that go along with this, we've got a couple. Let's talk about those.
Yeah, I pulled out two here, and of course, any theme can be complementary in another partner. The question that you should be asking yourself is, what do I bring to this partnership, and what can a partner help me with? But in other people, I thought about two themes that would be really great for restorative. The first one is analytical. So I mentioned previously thinking about other strategic thinking themes that could help you get a bigger picture. What analytical has in common with restorative is a patience with detail. So analytical is going to look for detail in data, in proof, in harnessing big ideas and boiling them down to their essence. What restorative is going to look for detail in is any sort of moving parts, moving functions, even sort of emotional details that might lead to why something is broken. And I think that it puts analytical and restorative really on a cool, similar space there. But what analytical could bring to restorative is information that's going to support our understanding. So to bring it back to your tech issue, looking for why did something break, what data can we mine that's going to give us some clues. I think about restorative and analytical as being a really great sort of detective partnership there. Restorative can bring that okayness, that comfort with problems, and analytical could probably inform a little bit about the problems and perhaps even around understanding of a solution.
Yeah, really important in software that we're doing both, identifying and being okay with problems. Like, okay, we've got problems that are going to need to be fixed, and then digging in and partnering with a group that can really think through those. I think restorative would stay with it. That's one of those things. It's easy to say this is broken, and maybe this is another raw and mature pair as we think about. It's okay. Yeah, this is broken, but the mature piece of restorative follows through with that and make sure that it gets taken care of, it stays top of mind, that the teams are continuing to work on it, those kinds of things to see it through its conclusion.
Absolutely. So
one more. Let's talk about
one more complementary theme.
activator.
I think about sometimes people without restorative don't want to have the patience to go back to the problem. You mentioned it, Jim. Oh, we've got a problem. You mean we just pushed out this great thing and oh, there's a bug in it. Or I got a brand new laptop and oh, it doesn't work. Or maybe it's even more of an emotional piece of I brought together a completely diverse team and oh no, they don't get along. You know, without restorative, it sounds like a roller coaster. With restorative, it sounds like only the upside of the roller coaster. Let's just keep building. Like the problem is part of the anticipation toward the summit. And I think if you could think about some influencing themes that help other people see that even problems are exciting and they're part of a bigger picture, that changes the tone. So the one that I pulled out was activator. I think that if you were restorative and you had a partner with activator, together you could get everybody on board and excited about the solution. Activator is going to say, let's get started. And so having somebody to say, let's get going toward these problems, let's get going toward these solutions, I think it helps the whole group see things as, part of the bigger picture rather than a one step forward, two steps back.
Another popular part of what we do is just likely and unlikely pairs. Let's dig a little bit into that. Let's start with likely.
Sure, and this is statistically. So statistically, looking at 250,000 of responses, a random sample of 250,000 people having taken StrengthsFinder, the number one theme to show up in somebody's top 5 alongside restorative is responsibility. Now, I think what responsibility and restorative have in common that makes sense here is they're both about a commitment to what already exists. So it's not about sort of fantasizing or imagining. They are both of these themes are about working with what's there. Responsibility is about working with the commitment and following through on sort of an external locus of control. If you've made the promise, you will do it. Restorative is about a commitment to I think the glory of what's broken, a commitment to an honoring of a service toward restoration, rejuvenation, not necessarily tweaking something and making it something different, but that beauty in bringing it back to what it was. So I think that's something that both of those have in common. If you've got them both, it's a fantastic pairing because I think it expands your ability to fix things. I think what responsibility brings is the ability to say, I'm going to restore not just things for myself, but think about how can I serve others? How can I have a little bit more of a commitment, a loyalty piece to it? Thinking about not being overwhelmed by things that break before you followed through on them. It's a pretty cool pair when you look at those together.
There's been discussions recently about when we think about likely and unlikely about maybe it's a case of because the likely pairing is usually the one or two that is in the top of the database and the bottom one or two are on this one. In this case, not so much when we think about an unlikely pairing.
Right, not so much.
Yeah, we talked about this up front.
It is maximizer, so we've already given you the spoiler there. Just so you know, to be fair, I want to say almost half of the least likely pairs are those themes themselves are in the bottom 10 of our frequency. So there is a statistical reason that they are the least likely pair for most themes. However, maximizer is 14th overall. So it's certainly in the top half of frequency in terms of what shows up in people's top 5. I think that tells us that there's a real reason that maximizer and restorative don't show up together. Now, if they did, it'd be a fantastic combination. And I might think about the ability to take something full spectrum from fixing it and then making it better. So thinking about, I really love the show, and this is probably U.S. centered, but there's a show called American Pickers, and it's these two people who go out to old farmsteads, or they go out and find antiques that are junk, and then they take them and they sell them, and sometimes they'll turn them into something better than it ever was. So I think if you had them both, it's that almost like a one-man band, being able to restore something and make it better. Now, obviously, the most literal translation of that is, go to an antique store, find something that's broken, polish it up, and add to it. But I think if you think about that in the context of relationships, being able to have both of those together would be, let's make sure that we're all on the same page, that there's trust, that we've repaired anything that's wrong, and that I'm also keeping my eye out for how we can take that and make it even better. So perhaps they don't show up together because in one person, you'd just be too much of a superhero if you had them both. The other thing, though, is they are very different. They have very different motivations. So maximizer is drawn to what doesn't yet exist, whereas restorative wants to enhance and rejuvenate what needs fixing. So I think maximizer has a lot more, in many cases, imagination, a lot more creativity, whereas the creativity from restorative comes from, let me find a creative way to solve this, not a way to enhance it or change it in any way.
Yeah, and for me, that they're on opposite ends. So,
Yeah.
30s, 30, 33, I think I said 33, 32, something like that, and 3. And they live on opposite ends. And it's interesting, just as I think about myself and as I've worked through that, I'm kind of one to tear it down when something's broken. Let's tear it down and make a new version of it. That might be another term you could use when we think about how you sort between those two, maximizer and restorative. I want to create a new version of it. I want to make it better than it was before. I want it to be faster and more efficient and some of those kinds of things, as opposed to restoring to old glory. Kind of, that's not as interesting, for me.
I think that it's really important to look at what you have high and what you have low, and use the word and instead of but, and look at what is beautiful about that. High restorative and low maximizer means you can be patient with problems and not have to worry about whether it's the right problem at the right time because you can fix them all. High maximizer and low restorative means that you can drive for something that other people might not even imagine and not have to be tripped up by worrying about what should have been. I think that there's very often we like to get tripped up in you have XYZ in your bottom 5 and therefore you should watch out for a lack of talent there. I'd encourage you, when you're looking at a full profile, in that, because you are your talents at the top just as much as a lack of talent at the bottom also describes how you behave. So before you start worrying about it too much, think about how does the separation between them really describe how you behave.
Yeah, JB, a couple chat room comments I want to address here. JB says he says rewriting things from scratch can be a dangerous thing in the world of software. See, and as a maximizer, I see that as an opportunity to do better things. Like, yes, a rewrite will take time. It'll take extra time, but we have a chance to, what I always say, cover the sins of the past, right? And so for me, that's a great opportunity. Whereas for someone who's restorative, that may be a painful process to think, wait a minute, you're telling me we're going to scrap this code and do something new? So interesting, the dichotomy between the two, how those make you feel. That may be really scary. Trish says $6 million man, right? This goes way back. If we think about the 6 million, he would be the $6 billion man right now. And the idea of taking a human and making and improving upon those pieces when we think about the two. So I think some great things there. Well, let's any final thoughts before we dive into the theme dynamics piece?
Yeah, if you're coaching somebody with restorative, I think it's your job to help them put words and value to their adeptness with problems and help them find the best place to solve those problems. Now, according to your other themes, and your experience and your value, that's where you're going to find the answer to what kind of problems are best for you. And I think maybe you want to deal with people, with process, high or low profile problems. I'd also encourage you to think about what were the best problems that you've solved? Were they pervasive? Were they one-off? Were they new problems? Were they problems that showed up over and over again? So ask yourself and look to your other themes and really give yourself some grace and be a little bit selfish and say, in a world, if I was only doing what I do very, very, very best, what kind of problems would I be solving? I also think it's important to celebrate solved problems, because if you've got high restorative, those are going to be your biggest wins, is those times when you've solved something. It can be tempting to just move on, because sometimes people asking you for help or problems arising that you can fix is just as much of a recognition for you. But I'd encourage you to think about how can you really celebrate those problems that you've solved, and think about as you're reviewing your progress, or as you're helping other people understand where your value lies, being able to call upon some of those big problems that you've solved, or some of the small problems as well, and look at that resolution as a real badge of honor. I also think there's an ability to cope that restorative holds very dear, and sometimes a lot of the value in somebody with high restorative is that they can cope with just about anything. That can also get you in a little bit too deep. So think about what kind of a partner serves you best. What do you bring to a partnership, and who is the best partner for you? So are there other restorative friends? Is it somebody in some of the complementary themes that we've mentioned? I think assess your current best partners and see if you can put some words to what do they bring to the table and what do you provide them, and make sure that you're reaching out to them so that you don't get in too far over your head because you are so good at coping.
Maika, in the context of theme dynamics, a good reminder as we kind of come towards the end of this season, we just have a few left, which is crazy to think. It seems like it takes us forever to get to the R's, and then boom, it's done.
And then it's like all downhill from here. Yeah, we've got a couple S's, and then it's over. We go straight from S to W, and we're done.
Don't forget those woos that are out there.
Don't forget the woos.
My favorite one.
Don't worry, we never forget. They don't let us forget them.
It's going to be Jim's. That's going to be Jim's show. But we've watched this year, as we think about theme dynamics, which has been fun, is to see more and more people digging out these themes. Of course, this app is available in Kurt Liesfeld's book, Expanding Your Strengths, available now globally. If you head out to coaching.gallup.com and click on the resources tab, then go all the way to the bottom of the page, you'll see I've got a section that has our books and some of the things. There's a direct link, and you can get this now just about anywhere in the world with both the book and this app that we're going to show. Very, very handy when we think about putting two of these pieces together. Kurt spent a ton of the final years of his life really digging these out and making them available to us. So Maika, we're going to dig in on a handful of these, and I was so glad deliberative kind of came up in the process. So let's start a little bit restorative and deliberative.
Sure. So with theme dynamics, we're talking about exactly what I previewed with restorative, is look to your other themes, see how they mix together, and how one theme interacts and interplays with another one, and what the result is. So the first one we're looking at is another executing theme. It's deliberative. My number 33 or 34. So this is 33 and 34 for me. Absolutely not where I function, but pretty cool if you do. Here's what it sounds like. You can deal with problems if you have to, but when you anticipate a problem, you can actually prevent it from happening. How much do you love that? Again, you could be sort of the entire planning and fixing division. So deliberative is about taking very cautious steps, making sure that you think through the entire process before you dive in. Restorative is, wow, when I have to dive in, I can fix it really quickly. So I also imagine the sort of preparation that deliberative would give restorative, and perhaps a quickness to restorative because you've already considered all the possible pitfalls.
Yeah, Teresa says it's her number 3 and number 4. So opposite for us. It's really low for the two of us, but high for her. I really appreciate partnerships with this combo, because I think it's really, really important in the things they think past they think it's almost like being able to see the future, like how empathy can sense how people feel. This is like someone who can sense problems coming. And I think how they respond to a group is very, very key, because it can come off you have to remember, most groups are forward-facing, future-pushing, and positive. They're like, this is going to be great. It's going to be a great product. We're going to sell tons of it, whatever, right? And then you come along right, for, and say, hey guys, there's going to be some problems here. We need to start bracing for them. And I don't think as humans we're necessarily set up to always appreciate that early in the early stages. So I imagine some of those people have run up against roadblocks and barriers. They get called naysayers. You only focus on the problems and, some of those kinds of things. So I do think if you've got this superpower, how you approach teams, if you don't have communication or positivity or some of those high, I want to partner with somebody too to think about how do we introduce this? Because I bet you've come up against the brick wall, right? It's like, hey, I can see the problems that are coming ahead, and yet you're not listening to me. I bet you've heard, if you have those two pretty high, I bet you've heard that before. So
I think these two, you could be Eeyore if you're off by yourself. You could be sort of sulking in the corner that nobody else is seeing the problems you're seeing, and they're all missing the boat, and aren't they naive? Or if you think about the fact that truly nobody sees what you're seeing, then you can be an oracle in the middle of the room. and you can realize that, in part of our excitement, we also need to get excited about what we need to avoid. And that can be a positive thing. And so I think, this superpowers here, being able to say very carefully, let's come at these ideas with grace, with caution, and with care.
Yeah, no, really good. Let's look at restorative and intellection.
Yeah, cool. So intellection is a strategic thinking theme. It's all about sort of getting lost in your own thoughts. I think what intellection brings to the table is greater depth of awareness, because it's that ability to really see things from every possible angle. It could look a lot like deliberative and restorative when you put these together. I think both of these combinations, when you add them to restorative, it's about thoughtfulness. What intellection brings different than deliberative is it's not an executing theme. So intellection might be able to slow down restorative a little bit more than deliberative could, and just say, let's make sure that we've got all our bases covered. I also think intellection isn't only focused toward potential pitfalls or potential risk. It's focused in every direction. So I just want to think about it all. So what intellection would bring to restorative, I think, is think about the debrief when something goes wrong. Somebody with high intellection is great in that room to say, hey, why did it go wrong? How could we be more aware of it next time? What do we need to do moving forward? What do we need to know even moving backwards? So if you take Kurt's words here, the two of them sound like this. Your first response to a problem is to retreat and reflect. Silence and solitude are your breeding ground for solutions. So give yourself that think time.
Yeah, if you got a really smart person in this doing these, I think it's really important, because you and I will want the answers right away. Let's just brainstorm through some, like right now, and we need to allow this person to leave, reflect. I used to have a friend in college who would do this, and I'd present a problem to him, and I would talk. He wouldn't say much, and then the next day he'd come back, and I'd already moved on, and he was like, "Okay, I've thought through these things for you." And so really, really important to kind of understand, you might need to give this person some time, an overnight, a couple hours, just some time to pull away and think. Now, but maybe the opposite side of this is restorative and adaptability. Let's talk about those two.
Cool. So in season 1 of Restorative, if you go watch it, Kurt talks about this idea of packages of calmness. And he says, adaptability brings a calmness toward change. Restorative brings a calmness toward problems. If you think about them both together, it sounds like this. You take time to smell the roses, but if you see bugs on the roses, you get the insecticide. This is one of my favorites, and I just imagine Kurt writing it and then just leaning back and laughing at himself, just like, that's the greatest thing I've ever done, because it's squirrely almost, and I love it. Thanks, Kurt, for this one. Yeah. Adaptability is about being in the moment, giving people exactly what they need when they need it. So to me, instantly, it points restorative toward fixing people problems. I think a lot of times the way adaptability fixes problems is you just take it on yourself and find an alternate route. But with restorative, I think you could be there in the moment with the other person and find a solution together.
Now, very good. Last one, let's take a look at restorative and discipline.
Yeah, pretty cool one. Also, no themes that I have. So
Me neither.
Lovely, amazing themes.
Yes.
Discipline's also an executing theme, and it's about sort of focusing and creating systems and living and thriving in systems that help you get things done. When you mix it with restorative, it sounds like this. When faced with the chaos of a problem, your precision, efficiency, and organization accelerate the return to normalcy. I mean, can I hire one of these people? That just sounds incredible, and I think it helps us understand the way that restorative changes depending on what other themes you put through it. So it's order-based problem solving.
Okay, speaking of order, we're going to get out of order here on Theme Thursday over the next couple weeks. We are off for 2 weeks after this, a little vacation, a little bit of scheduling on my end, and then we're coming back with significance, and you're like, whoa, 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 whoa.
Well, hold up.
Where's self-assurance? A very good one to put at the end, by the way. I think they're like, hey, you put me at the end, right? It's funny the way these themes work out sometimes and what we have to do with them. So we will be skipping self-assurance and moving that to the very end. That's coming up on November 3rd if you're listening on the live side. But as we skip to significance, when we put those two together, talk a little bit about significance first, and then let's jam the two together.
Significance is one of my favorites. It's an influencing theme, and it's all about being drawn toward purposeful work. The way that people with high significance filter that purpose is based on other people's reaction. So you're drawn toward things that means a lot to other people. When you blend that with restorative, I think it's about solving high-profile problems, or solving problems that are going to have a lasting impact, not just the day-to-day problems, but really it helps you sort to which problems I think are going to be best for you. Or it sounds like this if you use Kurt's words: you love to solve public problems because they have an audience. You perform better when someone is watching you. It's easy. I'm just going to call it out right now. Significance is one of the themes that people have the most trouble with when they see it the first time, because I don't know. Some people don't think it sounds very good to perform well in front of an audience because they hear just that need of an audience. I think it's a powerful, beautiful, compassionate thing to be constantly aware of how you're affecting others and to be driven toward wanting that positive feedback. So significance helps, I think, help sort people to doing work that's going to leave a legacy. In many cases, it's a mission, but it's about being, I think, excited about something that excites others. So I'm really looking forward to getting to talk about it. And thank you for those of you who are loyal listeners for giving us a little bit of grace and shuffling around your dates with us. We certainly appreciate that.
Yeah, always best to register for these, by the way, gallup.eventbrite.com. And then if we do move them, we'll notify you via email. So a great way. A lot of people are like, well, why do I register? I can just come to the free live page. Well, yeah, you can. But if we do have to move things around, sometimes the only way we know that you're coming is when you register out at the Eventbrite site. So again, gallup.eventbrite.com. Just get registered for them, and if we do move them around, with this fall has been a little more difficult than others, we will get that done. Just a final comment, when we think about significance that's coming up, I really think, both significance and command are pretty low when we think about the numbers that are there. And I think it's interesting. A lot of those come out in very, very aggressive or very high-profile leaders when we see those two come out. And I think the world can only take so many of those, to be honest. I think it would be tough if significance and command were up at the very top. We'd have a pretty tough world to live in. And so it's interesting as we think about those things and we think about, and I'm looking forward to significance as well. It will be awesome to think through that, because I think significance has the incredible ability, when we think from an influencing standpoint, to get people moving. And we oftentimes think of it as a selfish. This is where we have a theme bias. We think about it being selfish and maybe brash and kind of rude, and yet it has incredible power in its influence to be in front. And not everybody wants to do that. And sometimes we need upfront leaders, right? The situation calls for, I need to be in front of people doing things. And that's powerful. Not everybody can do that.
I'm so excited. We get to talk still about significance, about woo, about self-assurance. I think all three of those perform better when they know others are watching, and that need for an audience. And now here's my high connectedness coming through. It has to be by design that some of these themes don't show up that much, and there's a reason that you are who you are, and our entire journey here is to try and figure out how you operate better with the 7 billion people on the planet. And so I think that's this is all in the love of figuring out, what is the very best of these themes and how can we honor them in ourselves and in each other.
Yeah, for sure. Let's put a final, wait a minute. Where might I find, okay, so Wynn asked a question, where might I find some questions I can ask a restorative person to get them thinking about how they've used their themes? Her husband has it number 1 and doesn't see it. Maika, any thoughts before we wrap this up?
Check out if you've got the CliftonStrengths Finder resource guide. It's got great questions. But right away, I think, what is a problem that you solved recently? I also think about that sort of even self-reflection. What would you like to get better at? That's going to help them understand their adeptness with, understanding what could be improved. I would also think about what are you aware of that could be going better, either on your team or at work or with your family or with your friends, and help them be as specific as they can, because I think very often people with high restorative feel like they have to generalize some of those things, when the truth is they're really great at pinpointing what the problem is. So give them a platform, and then maybe even some resources. Say, how can I help you? How can we follow through on these pieces? Look for turnaround opportunities that other people might be avoiding. That might mean you're not taking on high-profile things, but that if you fix it and you grow it and you make it better, then it could be something pretty meaningful. So I'd ask yourself, what are you aware of right now that needs to be fixed that isn't?
Yeah, one report that I think is probably the most underused report that we have out there, if you're at the Gallup Strength Center, so gallupstrengthcenter.com, everybody downloads the Signature Themes report. A few download the Strengths Insight Guide because we tell them to, and then we have that exercise where you highlight what you agree and cross out what you don't, and I add things in that you don't see there. That's always a great exercise. And then I add one more thing: circle the words that you find most significant. Mm-hmm. We have a little exercise that I go through with the individual development plan that helps with all those pieces. But the Strengths Insight and Action Planning Guide, there are some great questions and great statements in that action planning guide. Almost just, I hear no one talking about it. So it's a great, you should download that for both yourself and your partner in this case. And if he's got restorative number 1, there's some great clues to questions you should be asking in there, don't you think?
And let's just real quickly talk about the difference. So your signature theme report is going to be a generic expanded paragraph for your top 5. My strategic is going to be the same as your strategic, regardless of whatever else you have. That's the signature theme report. The theme insight report and action planning guide, anytime you see the word insight, think customized. So that is actually based on an algorithm that pulls together from a database of a whole bunch of different possible sentences based on the theme dynamics. So your top 5 is still going to have a long paragraph, but it's going to be customized to you based on what other themes are in play. So my strategic, if you read it, is going to have elements of ideation, of positivity, of woo, of communication, whereas somebody else's won't have some of those same sentences. So the insight guide is going to be a lot more customized to you, and the action planning is designed to go through around each of those top 5 and say, here are some things you should look for, here are some things you should do. So that also might answer the question I see floating around there of, I've taken it, now what do I do? Check out that report. You can download it at our site.
Yeah, I highly recommend it. And the restorative people in us right now are saying, oh my gosh, Maika said theme insight guide, and on the Strength Center it says Strengths Insight Guide. We've called it, we go back and forth on what we call that thing. And I've even had, I call it theme insight because
the word insight is the one that matters. Forget anything else I said. Just Maika, go with insight. Our restorative people want that fixed. So anyways, Strengths Insight Guide on both Strengths Quest and the GSC is what that is called now, and we kind of go back and forth on what we call that thing. But Strengths Insight Guide and Strengths Insight and Action Planning Guide are the two that I think get underutilized. Every engagement I go into, Maika, that Strengths Insight Guide's first thing I pull. And I love to put those together. I mean, it's great to have the basis of what those are generically, but then it's also awesome to be able to work with them as that's tied into all 34 and these statements that they have available to them. There's just tons of things you can do. There's 2 hours worth of exercises you can do right there. So absolutely,
some pretty great stuff. Okay, final thoughts on restorative.
The back page of our companion guide is awesome, and it is full of words for restorative. So a fixer, a diagnoser, a troubleshooter, an investigator, rehabilitator, resuscitator. I love the word rejuvenate. It means to bring youngness back. And the final thing that I have here is a quote from C.S. Lewis, and it's pretty great, and I think summarizes restorative pretty well. It goes like this. A sum can be put right, but only by going back until you find the error and working it afresh from that point, never by simply moving on.
That's a great quote indeed. And we have come to the end of our 45 minutes that we always stretch to 50, which is tons of fun. We're glad that you came out and joined us live today. If you're listening to the recorded version, you are welcome to join us on the Thursdays we do this. Again, I'll mention Gallup.eventbrite.com is the most up-to-date schedule of everything that's going on. I know a lot of you Theme Thursday watchers or listeners could also be benefiting from our Call to Coach series. We, of course, same way, if you head out to the coach's blog, coaching.gallup.com, and click the subscribe tab there. I also have a link to all the Call to Coach videos. We have 150 of those or so. And you don't have to be a coach to listen to them. Lots of great information, lots of great insight. If you love talking about this stuff, we invite some of the best coaches. We just did Maika Call to Coach with Dean Jones, and it's
phenomenal.
Every time Dean is on, he just brings it. And
he does. You really should check it out.
I told him when he got done. I took a whole page of notes. I mean, I'm supposed to know this stuff, and Dean was so good. So don't forget, the Call to Coach series is out there as well. You can download this to your phone. Everything you need, including the links to our Facebook group, YouTube page, all the iTunes and RSS feeds, iPhone and Android apps, which, by the way, we're updating our apps. We've broken them a little bit in the process. So hang tight as we're going through the updates. That's one of those things we need some high restorative on that team to help us get some of those things fixed. We'll be, as we improve them, we'll be adding new features, and we got a bunch coming up. So if you've been using that app on your phone and you download it and you see you can't get the full definitions, that's broken at the moment. We will get that fixed as well. But all that information is out at our coaches blog, our record-setting coaches blog, coaching.gallup.com. If you're interested in becoming a Gallup certified strengths coach, you can see a list of all our courses that are available, courses.gallup.com. By the way, if you haven't, on our last release, we updated our store. So if you haven't been out to the store in a while and you want to get Gallup materials or purchase from there, that's just shop.gallup.com. Yeah, you see the pattern there? Courses.gallup.com, shop.gallup.com. The easy things to find and a lot of great information out there. And if you're interested in discovering all 34 of your talent themes, really, this is where I recommend you get a coach if you're going to do something like this. But if you're interested in doing it, it's available as an upgrade on the Gallup Strengths Center. Just go to GallupStrengthsCenter.com and look for the All 34 report. It's available for you. Many of you are doing that. But it's one of those things, I'd get a coach. Even if you're a coach,
get a coach.
I'd still get a coach. It's good to have a friend. It's good to have a paid friend that will tell you the truth. And so we appreciate you guys out there as well. If you found this helpful, we'd ask that you share it. And we'll thank you for joining us. And remember, we're off for 2 weeks, and we'll look forward to the next Theme Thursday. And with that, we'll say goodbye, everybody.